She said she remembered walking through ancient temples. She said she once loved a pharaoh, and that her soul had been waiting 3,000 years to come back home. Her name was Dorothy Edie, but the world would know her as Omm Sety, the woman who believed she was reincarnated from ancient Egypt. At first, people laughed at her, until she started revealing secrets about Egypt that no one alive could have possibly known. Archaeologists tested her. Scientists doubted her. But what they discovered next changed everything. This is the unbelievable true story of the woman who might have lived twice. If you just stumbled on our story by chance, welcome. Here, you'll find thrilling, mysterious, and strange stories from all around the world. Subscribe and be part of the journey. And now, let's enjoy the details that make the story. Dorothy Edie was born on January 16, 1904, in London. In the beginning, her life was completely ordinary, just like any other child's, until she turned 3 years old, when something happened that would change her fate forever. One day, while playing at home, Dorothy slipped and fell down the stairs, a terrible fall that knocked her completely unconscious. The family doctor rushed to the house, examined her carefully, and then announced, with deep regret, that the little girl had passed away. He left to get the death certificate, leaving the devastated family drowning in shock and grief. But when the doctor returned an hour later, he couldn't believe what he saw. The same little girl he had just pronounced dead was sitting upright on her bed, perfectly fine, as if nothing had ever happened. And the first thing she said after coming back to life was something no one could explain. "I want to go home." From that moment on, Dorothy began showing strange, unfamiliar behaviors. She kept repeating that she wanted to go home, but never explained which home she meant. She even started speaking words in a language no one around her could recognize, alongside her normal English. And even more bizarre, she began comparing Christianity, the faith she was raised in, with the ancient Egyptian religion. That alone was enough to make people around her suspicious, and caused plenty of problems for her and her family. As Dorothy grew older, her obsession with ancient Egypt only grew stronger. She would tell stories about her so-called real home, describing a grand building with tall columns and a beautiful garden full of fruit trees. And one day, when her parents took her to an Egyptian exhibition in London, the little girl ran straight toward the ancient statues, kissed their feet, and cried out, "These are my people!" But the real shock came later, when she was shown a photograph of the temple of Pharaoh Seti I in Abydos. Dorothy stared at it for a few moments, then, with absolute confidence, said, "This is my home." She asked sadly why the place was in ruins, and where the garden had gone, the one she remembered in perfect detail. And it didn't stop there. When she saw a photo of Pharaoh Seti I's mummy, she instantly recognized him by name and said she knew him personally. She was only 7 years old. Her fascination with ancient Egypt pushed her to study hieroglyphics at a very young age, and she mastered it faster than anyone could believe. When people asked her how she learned it so easily, her answer was simple, almost chilling. "I already know this language. I just forgot how to read it." Dorothy's obsession didn't fade with childhood. It followed her, growing stronger as the years went by. She once told her family that she had a dream, where Pharaoh Seti I appeared to her and said that someone from the underworld has found a way out. But the visions didn't stop there. Dorothy began seeing herself in strange, vivid scenes, In one dream, she was lying on a straw mat among a group of Egyptian women inside a massive hall. A man carrying a lamp walked between them, checking to make sure each woman was in her place. In another dream, she was being interrogated by a high priest. She refused to speak to him, and for that, she was beaten and tortured. That dream, keep it in mind, because it'll become a key to understanding everything that comes later. As these experiences became more intense, those around her began to think she'd lost her mind. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, but after multiple tests and evaluations, doctors found nothing wrong with her mental state. They eventually labeled it as nothing more than a teenage obsession that would fade with time. But time proved them all wrong. At 27, Dorothy started working as a cartoonist for an Egyptian newspaper, and that's where fate took a remarkable turn. She met a young Egyptian student named Imam Abdel-Meguid, who would later become a respected professor. The two married, and in 1931, Dorothy finally set foot in Egypt, the land she had dreamed of her entire life. Shortly after, she obtained Egyptian citizenship. The moment she arrived, she couldn't hold back her emotions. She dropped to her knees, kissed the ground, and whispered with trembling joy, "I finally come home." The couple settled in Cairo, and Dorothy adapted quickly to her new life. But the visions didn't stop. In fact, they became even clearer. She gave birth to a son and named him Seti, after the pharaoh she believed she once loved. From that day forward, everyone knew her as Omm Sety, Mother of Seti. Soon, a new figure began appearing in her dreams, a man named Hora, who visited her regularly and revealed details of her so-called past life. And that's when the pieces of the mystery started coming together. Hora told her that, in a past life, she had been born into a humble Egyptian family. Her father a soldier, her mother a vegetable seller. Her name was Bentrashit, which means harp of joy. After her mother's death, her father couldn't afford to care for her, so he took her to the temple, where she was raised among the priestesses. By the age of 14, the fair-skinned, blue-eyed young girl caught the attention of a young pharaoh, Seti I. As he continued to visit the temple, a forbidden love began between the king and the young priestess. Eventually, she became pregnant. But secrets never stay hidden forever. The high priest summoned her for questioning. She refused to reveal who the father was, and was beaten and tortured as punishment. Remember that dream from her childhood, where she was interrogated and abused? Now it made perfect sense. It was a glimpse of her former life. After enduring days of pain, Bentrashit finally confessed that the pharaoh himself was the father of her unborn child. To avoid a scandal that could destroy the king's reputation, and because she had broken her sacred vows as a priestess, she was given only one choice: to end her own life within the walls of the temple. It was at that moment that Dorothy understood the truth, that what she was experiencing wasn't madness or imagination, but the haunting return of a soul reborn, a past life that had come back to claim her. In 1935, Dorothy's marriage to Imam Abdel-Meguid came to an end after he decided to move to Iraq. But Dorothy, or as she was now widely known, Omm Sety, refused to leave the land she believed she had fought lifetimes to return to. She threw herself into her work, collaborating with some of the most respected Egyptologists of her time. And to everyone's amazement, her knowledge of ancient Egyptian life was beyond extraordinary. She could describe temple rituals, ancient customs, and historical details that no one had ever taught her. and that some archaeologists wouldn't even discover until years later. Her influence, however, wasn't limited to the world of archaeology. Among the local people, she was beloved, a kind, humble woman who offered help to anyone who came to her door. She used her understanding of ancient Egyptian medicine to treat the sick in her community, earning deep respect and affection from everyone around her. Though she completely abandoned Christianity and devoted herself fully to the old Egyptian religion, she never disrespected others' beliefs. She was known for showing warmth and kindness to both Muslims and Christians, while continuing to spend her own nights performing ancient rituals and prayers to the old gods. Often, she would sit for hours near the Great Pyramid, meditating in silence under the stars. By 1956, the archaeological project she worked on as a secretary and assistant came to an end. Soon, she received 2 job offers, one in Cairo, offering a high salary and prestige, and another in Abydos, with barely any pay at all. But for Omm Sety, was that even a choice? Of course not. Without hesitation, she chose Abydos. The moment she arrived, she said she felt something she had never felt before, a peace so deep it was almost sacred. In one interview, she said softly, "Here, I finally found myself. This is my real home." She headed straight to the temple of Seti I, the very place she had described since childhood, as if she'd walked its halls 1,000 times before. The details were engraved in her memory. Every corridor, every wall, every carving. To test her, the chief inspector of antiquities decided to give her a challenge. He took her to a section of the temple whose wall carvings had not yet been uncovered. Standing in total darkness, he asked her to describe what was on those walls. Calmly and without hesitation, Omm Sety began describing them in stunning detail. The positions of the figures, the scenes, the inscriptions, as if she were looking right at them. When the lights were finally turned on, everyone was speechless. Every single thing she had said was accurate. But that wasn't all. Do you remember the garden Dorothy mentioned as a child? The one she said was part of the temple? That mystery was about to be solved. Omm Sety confidently told the archaeologists that the temple once had a vast garden, and that it was there she first met Pharaoh Seti I in her past life. She even pointed to the exact spot where it used to be, at a time when no excavation had yet revealed anything in that area. And later, when the archaeologists finally dug there, they found it. A real garden, exactly where she said it would be. Omm Sety continued her life in Abydos, working side by side with Egypt's top archaeologists, many of whom openly credited her for several key discoveries. In their research papers, they often mentioned her name with deep respect, admitting that she wasn't just an assistant. She was an indispensable reference for anyone trying to truly understand the Temple of Seti I and its hidden secrets. In 1964, she reached the official retirement age and was transferred to Cairo, where she was offered a part-time position. But she didn't last even a single day there. The city felt lifeless to her. She quickly returned to Abydos, to the temple, to the land that had become her soul, and was granted special permission to continue working beyond retirement. A few years later, in 1969, she officially retired for good. Still, her connection to the temple never faded. She began guiding tourists through its ancient halls, telling them stories about the inscriptions, the rituals, and the people who once lived within those walls thousands of years ago. Her tours weren't lectures. They were experiences, filled with emotion and eerie familiarity, as if she were remembering rather than teaching. And just like the ancient Egyptians she so deeply revered, Omm Sety began preparing for her own departure from this world. But to her, death wasn't the end. It was simply a doorway to another realm, the world of the gods. She built herself a small tomb beneath the ground, and on its walls she painted a doorway carved with an ancient Egyptian prayer, a blessing meant to guide the soul on its eternal journey. She knew she would never be buried in a Muslim or Christian cemetery. She had chosen a different path, the path of her ancestors, the pharaohs. On April the 21st, 1981, death finally came knocking. Omm Sety passed away, just as she had lived, mysterious and utterly fascinating. But even in death, her story took one last twist. Egyptian authorities refused to bury her in the tomb she had built for herself, for sanitary reasons. Her body, unlike those of the pharaohs, hadn't been mummified and would decompose. So instead, she was buried quietly in a small, unmarked grave outside the Coptic cemetery. No headstone, no monument, just a mound of stones covering the sand. And there, the final chapter of one of the strangest women of the 20th century came to a close. Dorothy Eady, Omm Sety as she wished to be known, the British woman who spent her life believing, with absolute conviction, that she was a priestess from ancient Egypt reborn. She made real, verifiable contributions to Egyptology, acknowledged by the greatest archaeologists of her time. Yet she also left behind a storm of controversy among psychologists and scholars. Some saw her as living proof of reincarnation. Others believed she was simply a woman haunted by the trauma of her childhood fall, whose passion for Egypt blurred the line between history and delusion. But no matter what people said, one question still echoes to this day. How did Omm Sety know secrets about ancient Egypt, facts so precise, so hidden, that no book had ever recorded, and no one had ever uncovered until she spoke of them? She's gone now, and her secret went with her, leaving behind a mystery that still breathes in the sands of Abydos, waiting for answers that may never come. And that brings us to the end of our mysterious story, the story of Omm Sety, the woman who left scientists speechless with her memories and her astonishing knowledge of ancient Egypt. But the real question now is yours to answer. Was Omm Sety just a woman trapped in her own imagination? Or did she truly live another life, thousands of years before this one, and somehow return to tell us her story? Share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. You can also check out our other thrilling tales, like the Halloween Night Massacre and the heist that shocked America and baffled the FBI. Both are absolutely worth your time. See you in the next story.